This is a review for Management 310, Chapter 4, Test 2. Let's go. Here are the terms. Number 1 is the 4/5 rule. So this could also be the 80% rule, and this is for employees, and this means that the minority group needs to make up 80% of the selection. So if sexism is suspected amongst 200 applicants, then people would do like a check, and in order for it to pass the check, if 100 men were hired, 80 women would need to be hired. Next is bona fide occupational qualification. So this is a pretty fancy way of just saying a necessity for a job. Number 3 is adverse impact. So this is using seemingly natural criteria to hire that is actually biased. So it's kind of like accidental or subtle discrimination. And you might be noticing a theme of hiring and discrimination. That's kind of like what Chapter 4 is about. But adverse is like, if you were to say criteria, I don't know if this would necessarily be discrimination, but like, okay, for this job you gotta like lift heavy stuff, then it's like, oh, you're targeting like a certain group. That's not the best example, but you know what I mean, like putting criteria that would, it's kind of like a job qualification, but it would be less essential to the job. Next is disproportional treatment. So you can guess what this is. This is treating different groups differently because they're part of a certain group, or people in the groups differently. Next is diversity, and this can be real or perceived, and this is just having a wide range of different kinds of people, and so this could relate to age, gender, race, lots of different things. Next is the Equal Opportunity Commission, and this is an agency that enforces discrimination laws and works to prevent it. 7 is executive orders. So these are presidential orders, and this is crazy. I thought these were like super rare, but Joe Biden has already made 122. So that's pretty big, but executive orders, basically the president saying this has to happen, and it happens. Next is harassment, and this is basically just unwelcome behaviors in any form. Next is a hostile work environment, and harassment contributes to this, and it's a place where reasonable people would become offended or uncomfortable. Next is an inclusive environment. So this is kind of the opposite. This is a place where everyone is treated with respect, and you would want to work in this place as opposed to a hostile environment. Next is Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs. So this is like we just talked about, like the Equal Opportunities Commission, and these are federal contractors, so like government people who also enforce discrimination rules, but these people are most focused on veterans and people who are disabled, rights for them, where the EEOC is focused on gender and race. So that's kind of the difference you gotta know. Next is quid pro quo harassment. This is employment decisions based on sexual favors, which is obviously not allowed. Next is reasonable accommodation. So this is accommodations that are reasonable that help employees perform their jobs. So maybe like support training for an Excel program, or just things that are not like preferential or favoritism, but would help an employee do their job better. Next is sexual harassment. This is any unwanted sexual advances towards any kind of person. Next is similarity attraction hypothesis. So this is people prefer people who are similar to them, which is interesting. It's not just in the workplace, I don't think. Probably with friends or dating, you might be attracted to someone who has similarities or is kind of like you. Next is stereotypes, and you probably know what that means, but this is oversimplified assumptions about a group of people. Next, well, I guess I'll give a fun example. I'm trying to make this video a little quicker, but I'll still try to give examples. I guess the California stereotype would be super liberal, vegan, love the beach. Stereotypes can be accurate or false. Next is unconscious bias or implicit bias, and this is biases that are in your subconscious or you're not aware of. And I like to remember that because like explicit is like external or extrovert, like outside. So the opposite of that would be implicit, so it's kind of like inner. That's why it's like subconscious, you don't really like recognize it. Next is uniform guidelines on employee selection procedures. This has nothing to do with uniform or dress code. I like to remember this because uniform is like all the same. And so uniform guidelines is guidelines for a selection process of job hiring where basically applicants are judged on the same criteria. So it's like fair and there's no discrimination. Okay, that's chapter 4. Good luck on the test.